stepping outside of my comfort zone. That was sort of personally and methodologically. That was a learning process, and it brought me up against different perspectives on research issues that were challenging in a good way. So I found that what is a priority may be different, and also that substantively for you to sort of turn around the other way. So you're not focusing necessarily on people who are lacking in some way, but you turn around and you look at the privilege and how that is creating that situation of marginalisation. Personal relationships and trust are important. It's not necessarily your professional expertise and standing that is the basis for a collaborative relationship. You know, those personal relationships and trust take time to develop with effort and with goodwill.
I mean, often in our sort of roles as academics, we're told that we are experts and that we should be displaying kind of expertise all the time. And instead of that, what we need to do is adopt a kind of vulnerability position and say that we're really open to being educated and shown a different kind of way of doing things.
The structures, the power, the way that cultures have been decimated or attempted decimation of cultures, that remains, and it remains as a legacy, but it also remains as an ongoing process in terms of the governments that are in place, the kind of assumed universal cultures and norms of any particular country, and all the power and financial and value systems. And so when we come to any relationship or any particular process, we have very, very different experiences. So the common things talked about in research is about research being done on Māori as subjects, about people coming into communities or coming to a subject and harvesting knowledge and taking it away, and then the Indigenous people not being particularly involved. And sometimes that information comes back as very negative, damaging, deficit focused and framed research and findings. Science and research are a part of our knowledge and our history from the past through to the present day. But colonisation often tends to look at that as being a particular thing belonging to the West that then needs to be taught to Indigenous people, as opposed to us developing our own knowledge systems and having the power to name and determine and to practice our own science.
I do think that researchers need to understand that they are going into a situation which holds this presence, this legacy. For me as a Pākehā and non-Indigenous researcher, part of that was understanding that there are the long-term impacts and harms of colonisation that are ongoing, and understanding where colonisation has come from and how it's impacted, and having to own some of that legacy, even though I'm not directly responsible for it.
I find that non-Indigenous students tend not to know themselves. I mean, this is true of researchers as well. They don't think that it's part of their process to make themselves known, the way that Indigenous peoples are having to make themselves known, including researchers in a research process. And what I mean by that is they don't know their own bias. They don't know their own privilege. The frame of reference is always Western. So that becomes that by which Indigenous peoples, even knowledge systems, everything else is then compared. I remind them that Indigenous peoples were here for thousands of years, and we had our own modes of inquiry and validating our own ways. And if we had problems, our own ways of solving them. Our stuff's been here a lot longer and has stood the test of time. So you have to be accountable to us.
So if you are going to sort of be asserting yourself as the authoritative expert, then the biggest risk, I should imagine, is that you're getting it very wrong and perpetuating the sort of misleading and deficit ideas. And even more importantly, you're not actually going to be addressing the real issue that would help communities rectify and societies rectify inequalities.
It's probably billions over time of the amount of research that's been directed to try to solve the Indigenous problem. But meanwhile, in reality, the lived experience of people is still not a good situation. All of that research and all that problem definition happening through others and all the work happening really hasn't done much.
The non-Māori people in this country, Pākehā, you see them come into marae, into our gathering places to talk to us about research, and you can just see and hear the assumptions that they make around who they're talking to and what the knowledge is of those people and how they position the knowledge of those people. And you can see the struggles and the anger often that's held back in those kinds of encounters, where we can be incredibly kind to people and we play nice. And then if we don't play nice, we're seen as being the difficult Māori, the person who says no, the person who stands in the way of progress, or who stands in the way of these researchers doing their work.
So there has to still be this place for self-determination, for people to have questions, for people to change their mind and not get labeled in a negative way, because oftentimes the research, even if it is partnership and collaborative, isn't the community's idea. The researcher's stuck within this institution that's still very colonial and thinks about knowledge in very particular ways and rewards certain kind of behavior and outputs and deliverables compared to what the communities actually might need.
When particular methods are done within a Western scientific paradigm, it's done in a particular way, and it's done within that particular sense of identity. When it's taken into a Māori paradigm or a Māori frame of reference, then regardless of what the method might be or what the method might be called, it becomes Māori research, and for us it becomes kaupapa Māori research. So we can do a whole range of methods, but the way in which we do it, the types of collectivity and identity and strategic intent and the processes and the relationships are I think, what makes it kaupapa Māori.
One of the things that you need to do as a non-Indigenous researcher working in partnerships is to understand that there's absolutely a limit to a non-Indigenous researcher's understanding, for example, of what kaupapa Māori research is about. You can bring something to the relationship and to the research, but you just need to understand that what constitutes being informed enough about what's going on.
Methods are methods, talking, walking, seeing, counting, those sorts of things. But that's actually not the point. As I understand it, it's the how and the why that they used. And what I find fascinating is how those methods of finding out things about the world and passing on knowledge about the world are actually rooted in a much broader and established system of knowledge and thinking about the world.
There's something about creating solidarity. So there's something about working to the aims and preferences of the people or the community that you're working with, and having the space for those to emerge through research projects, going in with an opportunity to open a conversation and to start a new path. I think that really works. And part of that is about finding mutual benefits. So why is the partnership attractive to the people who are involved in it? What is everybody going to get out of it? And how can that be leveraged? What is it that the people within the community actually want to happen?
The most positive experiences I've had is when it's been a kaupapa set by Māori communities, things that they want to achieve, and then the call goes out and people gather around that particular kaupapa or agenda or aspiration and come on as partners. The non-Indigenous people don't determine or lead what's going on, but they join and they contribute to what's happening. And that, I think, is where the most creative things happen as well. Things that people can't expect, or that, as was said before, you can't necessarily write into a research proposal. When people come together with their own knowledge and their own expertise, but respecting and understanding this is a space where new things might emerge through the joining and the contributions of everybody involved, where people step forward and step back at particular times, depending on their knowledge, their roles, and their skills, all working to a common purpose.
This video has been produced as part of the UKRI funded research project Indigenous and Non-Indigenous Research Partnerships. It contains images from a comic which has been produced as part of the project and which is freely available to download from our website's resources page. You can also find an extended audio version of the recorded conversation between the project's team members about what makes a good research partnership.